Okay.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We just finished reading about the Makos. A few more to come this Shabbos. I'm particularly interested in the Makkah of Tzfardeya, the frogs. And aside from the annoying aspect of frogs being everywhere, the frogs were very noisy. They made a lot of noise. It was very upsetting to people, not only to have frogs everywhere, like the song goes, frogs here, frogs there. However, the noise level of all these frogs croaking at the same time was unbearable. And I want to focus on the notion of noise as it refers to davening. Obviously, davening should take place in an atmosphere where there is no external noise that would disrupt somebody's kavanah. That's always a concern. People should daven in a place where it's quiet, they can concentrate, they can focus, and there's no distractions. People talking in shul, obviously, is a distraction. People bringing children to shul that might not be ready to be in shul can be a distraction. Or people davening very loud can be a distraction. The whole purpose of davening is for an individual to communicate, to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a very personal way. And it's hard to do that when there's noise in the background. There's a very famous article recently in the Harvard Business Review pointing out several studies which indicate that a certain level of background noise is needed in an office setting to work productively. But too much noise can make it difficult to concentrate, and different types of noise have different effects on people. When you're davening Shemona Esrei, and there's very little background noise, a person can focus, a person can concentrate. But usually during the time when everybody's davening Shemona Esrei, there'll be maybe a creaky stender or somebody drops a sitter. But this is minor background noise. But people that can sometimes daven out loud can sometimes be a disturbing factor. We should do our best, according to the Mishnah Brura, when we're davening, to eliminate distractions. There are many different distractions. I mentioned some, but clearly one distraction that we occasionally come up against is an individual who feels he has to daven out loud. So I want to explore this, but it's interesting. What set me off in this direction is a phenomenal comment by the Sifsei Chachamim on the Makos. Every time that Paro had enough, he begged Moshe to remove a particular plague, and Moshe in turn davened to Hashem and to remove the Makkah. Excuse me, just 1 second. And the lashon that is used, the language that is used when Hashem prayed when Moshe prayed to Hashem, is vayetar Moshe. It's an interesting expression, meaning that he prayed. However, when it comes to the Makkah of Tzfardeya, to remove the plague of the frogs, the verb that is used is vayitzak. He screamed, he shouted. Now, why that language only for the Makkah of Tzfardeya? And the Sifsei Chachamim explains that there is a concept of davening. I will refer to it very often. It's called mashmiya la'oznov. When a person prays, he should be able to hear what he's saying. In other words, he should articulate the words. You should articulate the words so you can hear it. Not necessarily that your neighbor should hear it, but that you should be able to hear it. Mashmiya la'oznov. And it applies to Kriya Shema, it applies to Shemona Esrei, Birkas HaMazon, And the Sifsei Chachamim says that during the Makkah of Tzfardeya, the noise was so loud that Moshe had to scream to be heard, meaning for him to hear his own voice as he was pleading to Hashem to remove the Makkah as Paro had requested. Interesting concept. So in order for him to hear his own voice over the frogs, he had to shout, raise his voice. Normally, we don't have that situation, hopefully, in our shuls. There are times, perhaps, when tza'aka might be an appropriate form of tefillah, when we're davening for a sick person, when we're davening for the hostages, but it's not the paradigm that we use for our private Shemona Esrei, for the Amidah. We learned the archetype model for davening is Chana. It's in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, when Chana is praying in the Mishkan for a child, and she's described as her lips are moving, but nobody could hear her, meaning she could hear herself, but that was the model for davening. When you're davening, you articulate and actually say the words out loud in an undertone. You can hear it, but not necessarily anybody else. We have to enunciate the words, not just think about them. And this is the halacha in davening. On the other hand, the Gemara tells us, if a person raises his voice during davening, it indicates a chisaron of emunah. You lack emunah. Kadosh Baruch Hu can't hear you. You think you have to raise your voice so Hashem can hear you? Again, there are a lot of discussions in the Gemara about how loud your voice should be when you're davening, but the psak halacha and the normative approach is that when you're davening, you should be able to hear what you're saying. So you have to enunciate the words. It isn't just, you're not scanning the siddur when you daven. You enunciate the words. Again, one of the reasons why you shouldn't raise your voice, because there are people who are doing tshuva when they're davening. There are people who are listing their averos, and it isn't anybody's business standing next to you what your particular sins might have been. So you daven quietly, but you daven so you can hear yourself daven, not necessarily the person next to you. Which tefillos require the halacha of mashmiya la'oznav? Very important machlokas rishonim. The Rambam says that Rambam, the Rashba, they have a machlokas, but primarily you enunciate the words, but they're not necessarily audible to anybody else. That would be the model, unless you're davening b'yechidus. If you're davening by yourself for some reason and you're not with a minyan, then you can daven out loud. There's no reason why not. The Shulchan Aruch codifies the Rambam's language that you recite the words loud enough to hear, but not so loud so that others will be disturbed. Again, raising one's voice can help with kavanah as long as you're not doing it b'tzibur. And that's an important distinction that the Machaber makes in Shulchan Aruch. The Zohar, on the other hand, kind of writes or indicates that you're better off not to daven out loud. And that's the Zohar's opinion. The Magen Avram disagrees. And again, the psak halacha is that you should be audible to yourself, but not to disturb anybody else. If davening out loud would increase kavanah, then again, privately, not a problem, but certainly not to disturb other people. And we know that there are individuals, for whatever reason, like to daven loud. And that can be disruptive to the person they're sitting next to. And that is to be discouraged. The only time when we run into this problem, lama'aseh, in terms of practical actuality, is a yamin noraim. Because on Yom Ravim, people have a tendency on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to daven even louder than they normally daven, which perhaps would increase their kavanah. And on Yom Ravim, rather, the halacha seems to be a little bit more lenient and not that concerned about distracting other people. However, we should be concerned about it. The Mishnah Berurah cautions us that as important as it is to daven out loud on Yom Noraim, you shouldn't do it to the point that you're disrupting anybody else. There are certain points in davening. Now, again, I don't want to spend time, perhaps some other time, the history of the Siddur and how the Siddur and the Machzor came into being and when it came into being and so forth and so on. But there are a lot of practices that different communities do that were incorporated into the halacha once you had written Siddurim. Again, before the advent of the printing press, the Shliach Tzibur did everything out loud because not everybody had a printed text in front of them. So the Shliach Tzibur would do everything out loud, and people would just listen along and say Amen, unless you knew the davening yourself by heart. There's a fascinating machlokas regarding Tachanun in this regard. Tachanun, especially on Monday and Thursday, specifically on Monday and Thursday, the Tachanun that begins V'hu Rachum is viewed as an extension of Shmona Esrei. And therefore, as a community, as a tzibur, we should be reciting it out loud, according to the Shulchan Aruch. V'hu Rachum, after Shmona Esrei, should be recited out loud. The Ramah, who codifies the halacha for Ashkenazic communities, says that you should say it silently. Again, because it's part of Shmona Esrei is not said out loud. You say it silently. The Mechaber encourages people to say it out loud to inspire kavanah as a tzibur. And the Mishnah Berurah, in discussing this halacha, says in some places they recite it out loud, in some places they don't. What I find fascinating, unfortunately, I hate to say it like this, but most people don't read the Shulchan Aruch. And sometimes a little bit of knowledge gets translated in very strange ways. When the Mechaber talks about V'hu Rachum being said out loud, he refers to Tachanun on Monday and Thursday morning. But in almost every shul that you go to, well, how do people begin Ma'ariv? They all say V'hu Rachum out loud. They made that transference from Shacharis to Ma'ariv. Somehow, the original intent got lost. I just find that fascinating. Another area of Mashmiya La'oznov, of where you have to hear what you're saying, is not just in davening, but it also includes benching. In Birkas HaMazon, and in fact, all brachos, Shulchan Aruch says it's a requirement, especially for Kriya Shema. It should be said out loud. And all brachos, in fact, should be said out loud.
Yeah, I know, but you hate to pay the
Because Kriya Shema, what about Psuke de Zimra, on the other hand? Psuke de Zimra, it's interesting. Psuke de Zimra is not necessarily part of davening. It's introduction to davening. And different communities have developed different customs about Psuke de Zimra, saying it outside, saying it quietly. I remember for many years I would daven in the Hasidic shtibel, Anshe Krashnik, on a Shabbos morning. And the practice in that shul was, since davening really doesn't begin until Baruch, so everybody in the shul would say Psuke de Zimra at their own pace out loud. So you walk into shul for Shacharis, and everybody is saying Psuke de Zimra out loud. And then they would wait until everybody finishes, and then the Shliach Tzibur would get up with Shochenad. But until then, everybody was saying it to themselves audibly to elevate kavana, to inspire people. So, bottom line, all this comes from, I say, from this comment of the Sifsei Chachamim on the Makkah of Tzfardeya. The reason that Moshe had to raise his voice because he couldn't hear himself praying above the sounds from the frogs. And the halach in Shulchan Aruch is that certain parts of davening should be said out loud, but not so loud that it disturbs your neighbor. But you should be able to hear the words that you say. And this applies to Shemon Esrei. This applies to, especially to Kriya Shema. And there's even a view in the Mishnah Brewer that Kriya Shema should be read according to the trup, not just read the words out loud. You should learn Kriya Shema. That's a Mishnah Brewer's little extra halacha. But the bottom line, and we'll finish up with this, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need us to raise our voices when we daven. The purpose of raising your voice is to help you increase your kavanah in your davening. And if there are people who daven too loud that disturb other people, they can be asked politely to tone it down because it's disruptive. Mashmiya la'oznav means you have to hear it, not your neighbor. So hopefully, when you daven and you say it out loud, it will increase your kavanah. You're not just reading like you read a newspaper. Davening is heartfelt prayers, requests, petitions to Hashem, and you have to be able to hear what you're saying in order to understand it perhaps more fully.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Regarding distractions and, people talking around you, a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, in the Jewish Link, there was an article focusing on Rabbi and Rebbetzin Billet, who, when they were in Long Island, they had this whole project's not the right word, campaign or something.
Yes, I know it well. My daughter and son-in-law live in that community and daven in that shul.
Okay, so there was this whole thing of getting the congregants to sign on to promise that they would not talk in shul.
Yeah.
And, God bless everyone at Shomrei Torah, and I love davening there. I get there every morning, Shabbos at 8:30. There are many groups or pairs of people, no offense, but primarily in the men's section, that stand in the back or on the sides, chattering away.
Yeah.
And, it's just part of my personality. And also the fact that I was a teacher for so many years, I really want to go over to them and say, if you're here to talk, go somewhere else.
During davening?
Excuse me.
They're doing this during davening, you mean?
Unfortunately, you have people like that.
It's horrendous. And I don't understand if this is a halacha and everything, why aren't more rabbis throughout the world addressing it, not just like the shul on Long Island?
You're 100% correct. Maybe we should start a petition and put on the bulletin, whatever, to have people sign on the same way that they did in the Young Israel of Woodmere, sign a petition to all people who commit to not talking during davening. It would be a wonderful idea. Why they don't? I can't speak for the rabbis.
Why?
Yeah.
How did that work out?
It worked out very well.
After they signed the petition?
Yes, there was a big petition in the lobby, and people's names were publicized, and people signed on to. And I want you to know, the Young Israel of Woodmere is a huge, huge shul. Mm-hmm. I mean, on the main minyan, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of people they have there. The most dangerous place to be in Woodmere on Shabbos is after davening is over, because there are 9 different minyanim in the shul itself. I mean, it's a huge, huge facility. They own a whole square block of buildings. They're out, a lot of minyanim. But it worked out very well. We used to have ushers at Shomrei Torah a year ago, not a year ago, many years ago. They had ushers, but that didn't work out because the ushers sometimes were talking more than people that tried to shush. You're raising a very good point, and maybe you could raise this with the rabbis, that we should start a petition also, a big bulletin board petition. The people sign on not to talk. People who talk in shul should be asked to go outside. Why it isn't more important and why it isn't raised more, it's a very good point, and I think you should bring it up to the rabbi. I mean,
these are. I don't know most of the men that I see doing this. I just see them every week or almost every week.
I can only tell you this.
Important enough for you to come to shul. Like, hello, you're supposed to be a Jew that's caring about davening. So why are you chatting where everybody else is trying to daven?
I will go you one step further. The people that are chatting are all graduates of yeshivos. And my biggest complaint about the yeshiva educational system is they don't teach the siddur. They don't teach about how to daven. They have minyanim. They do daven, but the davening they do in school is not an educational process. They don't teach about the siddur. They don't teach about the prayers themselves. And I think it's a major, major shortcoming, because if they would learn about davening, what davening is all about, perhaps this problem would not exist. But if there are people who are talking in the back of the shul, they should be asked to leave. Who's going to ask them to leave? Maybe the rabbi should stop the davening and say, well, those people in the back who are talking, please go outside to talk, or find your seat, or stop talking. I know that there are different rabbis who have different approaches. The Rabbi Feldman, I think it was, in Atlanta, was very, very strict about bringing little children into shul. He didn't believe in bringing children to shul who couldn't sit quietly. If you can't come to shul to daven, you don't belong in shul. And he said it. He said, little children, like orders, should be carried out. That was his mantra. That was in one particular shul. And it was a very quiet shul. There was no talking. He was very strict about it. Different rabbis have different priorities. I would love to see a petition in our shul. One of the reasons why I don't daven upstairs is specifically because of the noise level. I daven in the Ashkama Minyan in the base medrash, and people that generally who go there to daven take it more seriously, and they daven.
The question is, do the people come to shul to speak with the Kadosh Baruch Hu or to speak with their neighbors?
100%. You're 100% correct. I mean, this opens up a whole Pandora's box of why people come to shul. I was just, I was walking home with Nathan last Shabbos, and it's freezing temperature, and mothers are pushing little pissalach in baby carriages. Why they bring these little babies to shul in pouring rain and snow and cold is not for them. It's a social event. They want to get out of the house. They bring these infants to it makes no sense in my mind. Right. I mean, I had children also, and then they didn't come to shul until they were able to sit quietly in shul. That's aleph base. But somehow that we are of a generation, unfortunately, that has different priorities and different values than the current generation. The current generation is very me-oriented, and they don't necessarily care that they're disturbing other people. It's a very selfish perspective. And I think the rabbi should take a stand on it. And there's nothing wrong with suggesting to him, let's have a petition. People sign on. I have a big bulletin board in the lobby. People can sign on to it. Not on Shabbos, of course. I think this would be a wonderful idea, and I encourage you to discuss this with Rabbi Markowitz. Go for it. I will support you. Go for it. Okay.
Will you be the first name on the list?
Absolutely. Even though I don't daven there on Shabbos morning, I'd be the first one on the list. No question about it. But again, I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand. People come to shul not to daven. They come to shul to see their friends, to schmooze. That's very nice, but that isn't the purpose of coming to shul. At least not the main purpose, anyway. You can do that at the Kiddush afterwards. But davening is davening. Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, comments, suggestions? It's a great idea. I'm 100% behind it, and I would support you. But to speak to the rabbi, it's a great idea. Excellent idea. If there's nothing else, have a wonderful day out there. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wally.